What's up, everybody? It's Bo here, and this is kind of a weird one for me. Back in the day, if you've been following my work for quite some time, you may remember that I had a podcast called Panel to Screen, and on that show, we occasionally would ask the question, can we talk about Star Wars? Well, this is a kind of a complete reverse of that, if you will. This is kind of like a, can we not talk about Star Wars? Look, The Acolyte is out and has been for some time, and obviously from this channel, of which you would expect us to talk TV, we have not been talking it. And there is a very good reason for that. And that is because I really enjoy talking about what I enjoy. I especially like it when the thing that I enjoy may be different from what maybe broader conversations on the internet are about, so the, oh my gosh, it's actually good kind of approach to something. It allows for a kind of more positive spin on what is perhaps a controversial property. I like liking things. And when I don't necessarily like something, or when something's not necessarily for me, I don't get a lot of pleasure of just going online and ranting about it. I know. That's what the internet is for. And yet, here I am. So I'm making this video not necessarily to critique The Acolyte, but to kind of explain why it is that I'm not necessarily talking about it. It's not for me, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think that everything from your favorite franchise has to be for you. We live in a day and age where franchises are king, and also they are mass producing content for a lot of different folks. It's different from the era when you were grateful to get that one movie every 3 years about your favorite thing, and it was tailor-made to you, the target audience at the time. The Acolyte, being part of the High Republic, is made for a very specific audience that is not me. Now, I used to be that audience, don't get me wrong. I remember when the High Republic was announced, it reminded me a lot of the Shadows of the Empire era, where they would kind of go in and explore what happened between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. They fleshed out the characters. They added new characters like Prince Shizor and Dash Rendar. You got an exploration of Black Sun. You had video games and comics and books and all these different tie-ins at the time. And it was great. I was the target audience for that. But I was also younger. I was a teenager, and now I'm not. I'm definitely not that. I've got kids of my own. I've got a job. I've got a spouse. Life has found a way, and not necessarily for me to be able to consume all of these tie-in EU-esque things coming out of Star Wars. And so a series like Acolyte, I don't have the affinity for this time period or these characters that would really benefit in helping to drive excitement for this show. I do have some critiques of it, don't get me wrong. I mean, I do think that there's a lot of bait and switch that has happened with it, even early on. We were introduced to these kind of cool Jedi. We got Trinity from The Matrix, but she's a Jedi now, but oh, nope, she's dead. And then we got the idea of oh, a Wookiee Jedi. We've never really seen that explored in live action, and he's chilling out, and you're about to see him throw it. Nope, he died off screen. Meanwhile, there's this very drawn out storyline of kind of what really happened with the fire and who's really responsible. And unless you're not paying attention at all, you already know that. So yeah, it just hasn't really grasped me. But that said, and still, I will say that there are some aspects of The Acolyte that I think are really great. I love how they are expanding the concept of religion in Star Wars. That really may get its own video at some point, exploring religion in Star Wars, but Acolyte has done a fantastic job of being very true to kind of the philosophy of George Lucas, even beyond just Star Wars. There's a great interview with him where he talks about how, in the real world, we've got all these various religions, and they're all describing parts of the same thing. Multiple people who are super zoomed in to an image of an elephant, right? And they've got to describe it. And one person might say, oh, it's long and it's kind of thick, hard, and white. And the other person might say, that's ridiculous. It's not like that at all. It's thin and it's gray and it swings back and forth. Well, one's looking at a tusk and the other's looking at a tail, but they're both talking about an elephant. They just don't have the perspective to be able to see that. The way in which the Acolytes come in and talk about the Force, it reminds me very similar to the Witches of Dathomir and their kind of almost alchemistic approach to the Force, where at the same time, neither of those groups even refer to the Force as the Force. They are essentially different religions surrounded by this one true all-encompassing Force in this universe. Meanwhile, you have the Jedi and the Sith, who I would actually argue are not separate religions, but almost different theological or dogmatic approaches to the same religion. That's a larger conversation. Like I said, if that's something you're interested in, put it in the comments. We may actually do a religion in Star Wars episode exploring some of these concepts in the future. But I really dig that. I love that they're actually going in with exploring the world of Star Wars and the various perspectives on religion in Star Wars. But along with that, there's a lot going on here, right? Like, it's broadly beautiful. I love seeing the return of kind of the Irish set pieces with like the gray, like the dark jagged rocks with the beautiful, just bright green. Very reminiscent of the Temple of the First Jedi shot on Skealig Markle in Ireland. Almost to the point that I'm starting to piece together that perhaps this unknown planet might actually be the same planet that Luke was on at that time, especially if you kind of tie in the yin and the yang imagery that we've seen and how that's kind of, you know, in The Last Jedi when the first Jedi is there and you kind of see the yin and yang imagery around that person. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? That could be kind of cool to see how they all tie it in. And while the cast is filled with great actors who I look forward to seeing where their careers take them and where they go from here, there is really one person in particular that has really stood out and has been the main reason why I've been tuning in, because I am fascinated with this character and where they will go. And that is Darth Teeth, aka the Sith who laughs, aka I can't remember his name, ironically. And that is the character played by Manny Jacinto. I love what this guy's doing with this character. Very different from Sith that we've seen before. Even when he's like first introduced and he's kind of the goofy shop owner, right? And then you start to piece together what's going on, and this guy is truly, you know, pulling the strings behind everything. He clearly has some kind of tragedy in his background, given the mark on his back and the whip-like abilities of that one comic book character's lightsaber thing. Yeah, not a huge fan of that, but we can see specifically that he has had it a bit rough and doesn't exactly have the best view of the Jedi. This series broadly doesn't have the best view of the Jedi. And that's because at this time in the timeline, the Jedi were awful. They're basically cops. And that's the thing. This is also part of the reason I don't like this era of the Jedi Order. For me, Jedi are far more fascinating when they're wandering samurai, not cops to be used as a tool of the state. There's a lot going on there. I mean, again, maybe religion in Star Wars. It might be a fun one. But I'm curious to see where Darth Teeth goes and what they're doing with that character. So I am tuning in every single week, but broadly, it's just not doing it for me as a series. It reminds me a lot of Ahsoka. It suffers from a lot of the same problems that Ahsoka had, but it doesn't have the benefit that Ahsoka had for somebody like me, which was I was already emotionally invested in almost all of those characters going into the series, so that it really kind of pulled me through despite a lot of the problems that it was dealing with. And I don't have the same emotional connection to these characters. Maybe I would if I was into the High Republic era content, but like I said, it's not for me, and that's okay. Maybe it's for you, and maybe you have absolutely been loving The Acolyte. Maybe despite not being somebody who was into the High Republic stuff or who has been into the High Republic stuff, it was able to capture your imagination and really pull you in. If so, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear amazing things about how this series has really been great for you. Just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean that it's not someone else's cup of tea. And hey, do you like the idea of a religion in Star Wars video? Is that something you'd like to see? Put that in the comments as well. Let's talk about it.